Welcome to Redefining Engagement. I'm Francesca Duma, Director of Audience Development and Strategy at Contribly. And in this show, I speak to leaders and innovators in the media industry so that we can bring tips, wisdom, ideas, and even some things to avoid so that we can all do more engagement better. So without further ado, let's move on to our next guest. Today, I've got Kevin with me, and I'm really excited to hear his opinions on engagement because he is from this fantastic area who have their own challenges that we might relate to. And let's get straight into it. So first thing, hi, Kevin. Thank you so much for giving me your time.
Hi, Francesca.
Would you mind starting off? Tell me a little bit about what you do and your experience, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Francesca. Yes, well, my name is Kevin Walsh. I'm editor-in-chief of a Danish local brand called Nordjyske. It's going to be difficult to pronounce for a lot of people. It's a more rural district in the north of Denmark. So yeah, but I lived in Copenhagen a year ago, working for a national brand, and got an opportunity, and we took a decision as a family to move across the country to a new city and get a new role as editor-in-chief. And yeah, landed here a year ago now. Very precisely a year ago, actually, and trying to get my grip around what it means to be a local brand, and trying to figure out how to work in a digital future.
How was the move for the family? First question, I guess the most important, because that is a big move.
It is a big move, and I'd been at the same company for my entire grown-up working life, so it was a new company, new role. But as you said, most importantly, for the family also was a big change. I've always lived within 15 kilometers district, so moving 400 kilometers across the country was a big move. But we got a house, we have a garden now. We lived in the center of Copenhagen before, so there's a lot of good things. And I would say the kids, they're now 9 and 6, and they adapted really quickly. And as they adapted, I mean, that is 75% of everything, isn't it? That was kind of the important thing. So getting them settled, and they settled really quickly. Met a lot of new friends, have a garden, enjoy it. Really good.
Super resilient kids, aren't they? We
They
need
are.
to learn from their book
Yeah.
because they're doing something right.
Don't ask the grown-ups. That's another story. No. It's going.
And I guess we'll go straight into it. My first question, which is always, I think, the hardest one, is what does audience engagement mean to you?
That is a very good question. It is a very difficult question, and I kind of jokingly before the recording said to you the kind of philosophical question almost. What do you believe? And I hate being the one trying to describe something by saying what it isn't. But I would say that historically, I think media outlets been very good at seeing engagement as we have something that could engage you. We wanted to give you something, so we have channels, we have products, we have news, we have content. But I think that the last decade or so, it's beginning to be a lot more obvious for everyone that engagement is actually also giving the public, giving the audience a voice, a way of being heard, being seen. Really taking engagement to be what it means, that it's a two-way thing, not just us doing something. So for me, audience engagement is really to figure out how to, of course, engage people in what we do, but also really making sure that what we do is coming from where our audience are and how they see the world. So it is a two-way thing to really try to get a grip of what they find relevant, what they do, what they find important, how they can be part of a conversation, how they can be, feel a media brand more than just us giving them news.
Wow, that is a great definition. It sounds pretty hard to do, but I
It's
love
easy,
that.
right?
It's easy. I love the there's a word that you said in there that I think resonated for me, and it's what the audience are feeling. And I think we don't necessarily talk enough about that. We talk about user needs, what people need, but that feeling piece, like feeling included, I really like that. And your definition has changed clearly. Could you give me an example maybe of how we do some of those things that you just said? Because that's a bit of a tricky one.
Yeah, but it is tricky, and but if you go back where I was at my old job in the national, where we had a major reach, really good, really liked, we did a lot of things digital, really good at pushing our content, doing channels. Going to a local brand where our demographics are smaller, we have a smaller group that we need to be relevant for. We have a geographically kind of area that we need to be with a certain kind of people, and it was really obvious for me that when I say feeling, it's just trying to how obvious it was for me that we weren't good at communicating with them. So legacy brands, everybody knows them. That's our. It's. I mean, Nordjyske has been here for 250 years. Everybody knows the brand. It's really cool. We were part of the Danish, making the Constitution, writing the Constitution. We had. I mean, the historics are great, but the problem is that's what we are now. We are legacy. People don't find us relevant. They don't connect with us. They see us as their grandparents' newspaper, something old. So even having the dominance, having the relevance, having the reach, it didn't give us enough that people actually want to engage in your content, pay for the content, and be an ambassador and a subscriber, because we didn't connect with people. We just give them what they've always, what they always received and what they come around that we give them, which is just news content. We give them more content. We didn't really connect with them, so we need to do that. And to be honest, I haven't broken haven't found the silver bullet of doing it easy, but what we're doing some of the simple things, which is really being trying to be good in our moderation, being active in conversations right now on social media, because that's where there's a lot of it. We're teaching a lot of our editors, trying to talk to them about being profiles, going out, being faces on the journalism. We're looking into we've done a couple of events, but we want to do a lot more events that people can see physically. That's the funny thing about digital, being 100% digital, that it goes into the physical world in events. Events are it's hot again. Having events, that's how you connect to people. So all of a sudden, and we thought that we were being digital. We didn't need the events, but the events are so important to put faces on the journalists, to connect to your audience, to make them, the feeling of a community more than just a news outlet. So that's the way we're trying to do it now, and then we do a lot of content, really being good at listening to data and listening to what's relevant for our target group, which is another target group than we're actually connected to right now. And we love our readers right now, but they are they are plus 70. They love print. They love using a newspaper as an omnibus. A one visit. You go there, you get all the news, you're done. And that's the position we've had for years and decades and centuries, and that's been working really good for us. So there's nothing wrong in that, but I can see us going into the future with that business model and that understanding working. So we need to find new ways of connecting to the audience.
I I love the fact that your brands have such an amazing history, and if anything, that's something that I feel should be drawn on so much more, because yes, young people potentially see them as old, but they potentially don't even really understand what they are doing when they're engaging with those brands. There's a whole branding piece there that is
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic.
And don't get me wrong, Francisca, I'm proud of that legacy. I'm proud of the history. It's not that, but it's also, it just means that a lot of people also have, but that's on us because we haven't been good at branding ourselves good enough. It is just that it's a bit dusted. It's a bit old. It's a bit, for the new target, the new younger audience. And when I say younger audience, again, I'm not talking about the 18-year old yet. That's an whole other question. I'm just talking about, I'm saying our age bracket between, let's say, 30 and 55. So these are people that actually have a job, they're active, they have families, they need information, they need news, but they're not connecting properly with, especially the legacy newspapers, and not Nordjyske, where I'm from. We have the same issue, and that's kind of what we need to address if we want to be relevant going forward. So it's not I'm proud of the history, but it's just we need to shake some of the dust off and revitalize the brand.
Yeah. And in your experience, what aims does this audience engagement strategy that you potentially putting together deliver on? So why should news brands be doing more engagement? All of it should meet your strategy, but like, is there one thing that it's really hitting on the head or trying to?
So I am really data driven. I love KPIs. I wouldn't do this without believing that it actually it makes a difference for the business as well. But
So deeply.
actually, and we have this very, so we use this funnel in our journalism. Also use this kind of funnel thinking. So we do something in top funnel, something for churn prevention. So everything we do has kind of a goal. It's not the same, but we need to be aware of what we do because we can't just do stuff without knowing what we actually want to do with it. And with audience engagement, I would say these things I'm talking about could be one of two things. So for sure, it addresses one of the biggest challenges we face, which is churn. So I mean, in print days, if you had a print subscriber, they'll stay there for life. So you had people phoning people because just one subscriber would be a lot of money. In a digital world where we go in and out of subscriptions like like yesterday's shepherd's pie or something like that. We need to be really good at this, and the connection gives a feeling of belonging, a connection to a brand, and that's really effectful when it comes to the payday each month. But I will see that's the key thing for me. But I will also say that at the top funnel, going out and making sure that you're seen and a lot of new eyes on you doing stuff that's new for us that we wouldn't normally do, and getting new people, new audiences in, and seeing that we are not just what your grandparents used, with something else. So I say one of those two things would be where I see it. I don't see it on traffic, on conversions right now. I see it really upper funnel, reach, and I see it churn prevention.
And how would you measure that? What are you looking at when you're measuring this audience engagement that's meeting this churn and this
It
reach?
would it would be different, but it would be vary from initiative to initiative. But it could be CLV, customer lifetime values. Could be just, it could be going from a trial to a normal subscription, trying to figure out if you can see some kind of patterns that people that been to an event, or people that are active in our comment sections, or people that more or less, engage more. But it could also just be people who have more newsletters, people who open more newsletters, who click more newsletters, who come more often. That's more. I mean, that's, to be quite frank, that's the level we're looking to right now. It's also just when our products engage, does that mean that people would stay longer? I would say my hypothesis would be that that is what they do, but we need to make sure that we have the data to show us it actually working, and that's what we're looking to right now. So what are the right products at the right time to make sure that people stay as long as possible?
You must have some good data analysts in there helping you with that, because
we we're looking into it. Let's just say we have good data analysts, but it is difficult, and we are not as mature a company as somebody else. So we're also learning this, but there's a lot of good use cases out there to be more intelligent. So we don't need, and this is the thing with data, we have all the data in the world. We don't need every data. We just need the right data, and making sure that we can see the patterns. That's what we're working into right now. And hopefully when it's up and running and really a good machine, it will be a lot more automated and just work out of the box. Right now it's manually, and we're just getting a lot more intelligent down the road.
I think a lot of brands are doing that. They're waiting also to see what the bigger brands are doing, or the ones that have potentially a little bit more money, like for them to fail at it and then learn from that and then bring that into their teams as well. There's a little bit of that going on.
I think we're all looking for the silver bullet to find out what's the really ways. Use the data, and you say data analysts. I think one of the learnings for me is that analysis of data is important, but we are really, some of the really good people out there that do it are the ones that understand journalism as well, so they could put it's not just analyzing data, it's actually understanding behavior, seeing patterns, and go into not just the statistical stuff, but actually seeing the patterns and understanding. The really good data analysts are often old journalists who just love Excel and just love spreadsheets and love seeing this. But
There's a lot of those.
for me, it's data is a lot of really just turning data into actions and understanding. So I try to. I'm not succeeded yet, but I don't want people just to look at data. I want them to see data when there's an action or an understanding on the other side. Because data itself, it doesn't really give you anything. It can give you a carrot or a stick sometimes. It be red or green, but it doesn't really make you any wiser. But if you have an action or a deeper understanding of your audience, that's where you really see where you can make the change of what you do.
Matching those two together, and this is our theory. Is it true? That kind of conversation with your audience. Fascinating. We don't talk enough about data on any of these. So maybe I'll keep that one for.
Don't get me started, because we won't be talking about anything else.
Yes, that's so true. And in your opinion, what are the hurdles and challenges? What's stopping news brands from engaging better?
I think, even though I say we have 250 years of experience, and the old brand I came from actually has 275 years, so it's old brands with a lot of experience. But I don't know if it's just my theory is that especially legacy brands have we come from a world where we didn't have to engage really. We owned the information change, we owned the information structure, we had everything. We never really, it's not really in the organization to be really good at it. So actually, even though we have 250, this is what we're actually learning now, is to take audience engagement seriously and really understanding it. And I mean, for legacy, what we come from is this: we are journalists. We're this, I call it kind of contract understanding of journalism. We're critical. We investigate. We take make do all the great things we do with journalism. And that's what we stand on. That's what we really believe in. That is so important. That's not what I'm saying. But on the other side of contract journalism, you have community journalism, like the understanding of that what you do is not just a one way. It's not just us giving information. It means something for a community. You're part of a community, and this community understanding is difficult to understand if you've been talking about the contract side of things for your entire life. As I say, that's what you do, and people get angry. What you do, you say we have the right to do this. We're journalists, and you do have the right, and we shouldn't stop doing critical stuff. We shouldn't stop being what we are, but we need to take into account that there is a community you're a part of, and you need to be that, and you need to. You can't just take for granted that you're part of community anymore. That's what happened when you're digital. We're not just part of community. We can be, as I say, in this part of the country, there's too many people here who live a perfectly happy life without using Nordjyske. That's an issue. That they don't find us relevant enough to be part of their everyday routine. We're not important enough. We were that 40 years ago. We're not that anymore. We need to what do you say in English? We need to kind of make ourselves deserved in that realm again. That actually we are important, and we are important. My what I fear the most is how far does it go before people actually understand how important journalism is. So how far do we need to go? Do we need to do a lot of news brands need to die before people actually see that is important? Or hopefully we can, by rebranding, by doing what we do, by telling our story, we can prove to people and show the audience why we are important. But I do fear that, I mean, with all the all the possibilities of spending time on anything else than news media today, I do fear that we become obsolete before people will understand that we're important. And it's down to public service outlets and nothing else. And that's really something I fear. We need private, free media outlets that can do what we do with great journalism and free and independent critical journalism.
I as an ex-teacher, and I know I bring this up a lot, but there is a whole education piece to that in terms of getting people to understand why it's so important. And I agree, we shouldn't have to get to a point where a lot of them die off before people realize.
And I was actually scared to use that. I was scared to use that as an excuse or a branding, like that explanation, because I've seen the industry used that explanation as an excuse for not developing. So
That's
they
so
just
true.
stayed in the contract. They stayed in what they did. They said, we are important. We need to be here. We're democracy. We are everything.
Mm.
But standing so I've actually just learning to take that into account again, like the democracy part of it, because it's been used as a bad excuse of not changing. But it is, as you just said, and which I agree, it is something we need to educate. Of course, as a society as a whole, but also as a news outlet, we need to explain why we're important and show it, and keep on showing, keep on explaining, and not being afraid to go on the high hat and really say we are part of the well-working democracy. We need to be here. If we're not here, what then? So I'm coming back to that being a key thing I say again and again, but I actually was a bit afraid of using that because I think the industry has used it as an excuse.
I think marketing even has become a dirty word in a sense, but we have a marketing problem.
Yeah.
You know, any brand that you're going to buy in the supermarket has absolutely no problem shouting out why it's so important. You know, oh, you need to be eating this because, you know, we're really healthy for you. In the same way, I don't think
But
we necessarily shout it out as much because I don't think people are that aware, and I don't think students are that aware, or young people. But that's a completely different story. We're preaching to
it
the
is.
choir, aren't we? Because everybody in
We
our
are.
industry totally knows we're important. But but going back to what you were saying around the hurdles and challenges, you've basically said, if I'm repeating correctly, there are two audiences. You've got your own newsroom, and we need to create this cultural change in the newsroom for them to be open to engaging our second audience, which is the reader, or the you know, the people we're trying to provide this news to. And I'd love to hear from your point of view, have you got any examples of how you are trying to overcome that challenge, of that cultural challenge within your newsroom? Like, what are you doing to get people, your journalists, to engage better with your audiences?
Not enough. That's the simple question, but a simple answer. But again, we're just starting and getting better. I think journalists as a whole just need to be better to understand there is another audience. That actually who are the audience? What are their needs, their feelings? Trying to understand who you're actually. I was going to say writing for, but of course it's not only writing. And so that's, I think it's a very simple thing to say, but it is actually difficult to culturally to get that, take that into account, that you're actually doing something for someone and not just doing a journalist whatever you think is interesting. But that is, when you change culture, even though it sounds simple, it is difficult, of course. And I think the other thing is just really teaching journalists that and normally they do like, because we do like our bylines a lot, but understanding that you are a person with a face and an identity, and you can be active in a comment section. You can be better at actually engaging, you know, the ones when people write to you, when people contact you, but putting some faces on the journalists. And you think that's a way of creating. So they need to do more video, they need to be in audio, they need to maybe be at an event, they need to just going away from the old, you know, black text on a white background. There's a lot more than that, and going away from just the one way idea of my gut feeling says this is an important piece, so I do it. No, you need to understand why you're doing it, for whom you're doing it, what's the effect you want with this, and again, if you succeed or don't, what can I learn? So if you're taking the journalistic, you know, work chain, which in old days just, well, you go in, have an idea, do it, you publish it, you go home. Now this is where it starts, where after you publish. So what is the idea? How do you get it? Where does the idea come from? When is it relevant? How do you do it? How do, before you publish it, how do you tell the story, right? Then after you publish it, how do you curate it? How do you keep it going? And when the analytics, again, back to data, when that comes back in, what does the data say? Should you do more? Should you do less? Should you do it another way? All of these things. So we are, even though we don't like saying it, journalists are becoming small marketing people themselves, persons themselves. They are becoming a lot more commercially aware of what they do. They're not commercial because they are journalists. It's not that I'm saying that we're not journalists. The backbone of what journalism is hasn't changed at all. I would say it's been even more important now than ever what the journalistic backbone is. But understanding how to curate, to publish, to do what you do. So that is becoming a bit more commercially aware, a bit more data savvy, a bit more understanding the marketing side of what you do. And I don't know if every journalist should do this, but that those competences in a newsroom will continue to rise. The need of them.
It's hard, isn't it? Because we've got to do so much more, and yet we the expectation is huge on these poor journalists. But at the same time, if no one's going to read your content, well, what's the point in writing it? Like, you could write the best story in the world, if no one actually reads it, then what was it for? And
And
there's
people
a
do
little bit
like
of
being
that.
journalists do like when they say they hate data, a lot of them, and then when they do something that's really read, they love data. When it kind of
Like me with my Instagram posts every time I
underlines
post
their
online.
story, it just
Sorry.
exactly. So I think it's possible, but it is huge expectations. And again, we need to educate and help and show the way. And maybe we it's not something everybody should do at the same time, but it is something that. And to be honest, Francisco, if you look at the younger journalists coming in now, I mean, they started when they're 20 years old, 25 years old. A lot of them have these competences. It's natural to them. Understanding social media, understanding digital, understanding data, understanding the small marketing side of things. A lot of them do understand it. It is more natural to them. But of course, if you've been sitting in the same chair for 30 years and writing a story as you always did, it is a huge challenge. It is difficult and different. But I do believe that again, everybody does want to be read, and as long as you're open and you're willing to listen and learn, everybody can develop a bit anyway.
Mm. And maybe let's talk a little bit about strategies and best practices. Do you have any strategies that have proven effective so far in engaging your audiences, or have you done anything that maybe a specific example of something that worked really well and you're quite proud of, or potentially not well at all? I don't know.
All the concrete examples, yeah. It's again, where do you put the line on audience engagement? So what is the good examples? I mean, what I did at the old company, we really took our content and just started. We didn't even use user needs, but that was the idea of really understanding and listening and cutting into the product and saying, this is the way we do it, and really understanding how people, get the news and how do you get the news. And we really had some great figures, but it was more the one-way audience engagement and not a two-way. We don't have that many good examples where I think we've succeeded in really getting the engagement. I see a lot of good examples in the industry where people. So if you take, I don't know if you've probably heard about Zetland from Denmark, who is a purely digital brand, and you see their comment section on their articles where it's almost creating new content every time because people are engaging in the stories, stuff like that. I would love to do that a lot more. So what we did to do that, we closed the comment section on Nordjyske. So that's kind of ironic, but it wasn't working at that time. But we're definitely gonna look into that and making sure that the journalists bring more to the discussion when it is there. But that's a good example of how it should work. We're not good at it. We're trying to do the events, and I think every time we have events where people are there, it's always sold out, which is a good thing, showing the events. And just so we haven't really succeeded in doing it a big business thing yet, but really just feeling that connection when people are there physically is something that it is just second to none the best way of creating connection. And maybe you can only do it 100, 200 people at a time, but I mean, the connection there is unique, and you can really feel the connections. I would say the event side is something we should be looking into a lot.
For both the audience and for potentially the journalist, must build so much loyalty. Going to an event and having had that moment and having all of that experience, like, must be a fantastic way of building loyalty.
It's in theory anyway. That is, I mean, some journalists will also say it's nerve-wracking actually meeting your your readers, and I would say myself it is. Being editor in chief, you get a lot of comments, a lot of good discussions, but I always feel just listening to what actually is being said and actually answering them with not agreeing, but just answering, having a good discussion. It always works. It's just a good way of meeting people.
And on these events and on any of the audience engagement that you're doing, at what point are you considering the audience engagement? Like even when you're writing stories, what, at the moment at least, how do you plan that out?
Way too late in the process. Again, it sounds, you say what we're doing. It's more, I will say what I really would like to be doing, because we're not good at it yet. It's something we do at the end when it's all done, wrapped. I mean, then we discuss what would be the right way of engaging our audience with this piece of content, probably made of text on a white background. But it is like with anything else. It is just really, we have the same discussion when we talk platforms like video and audio. I mean, instead of just doing a piece and when you're done, you look at it, and from the beginning, you have to look at each piece. What would be the most effective and the best way of telling a story, which is what we do. And I haven't actually heard it yet, but at some point, I hope some would say, well, this story would actually be best if we started off as an event, or as, doing something where we started off engaging with, some group on Facebook or whatever, but really trying to just seeing the audience engagement as part of the process, instead of just where can we put this at the end of the line. But I haven't really found them. I think we are okay at it, and when we look at sources and how to find sources, but actually doing an audience, we're not really good at understanding what we can get out of the audience and how we can use them to get a better story, and the right story even. Right now we do the story, we look at it, and sometimes it just wasn't the right story because it wasn't relevant enough. It wasn't really what the audience was feeling. It was something else. So hopefully at some point I'll see a lot of us. Maybe I should be better at asking, when I get a story pitch, what change, what difference will this make, or why? I mean, what would the audience say to this, and how will you involve the audience? That should be part of the process as we ask, what are the good headlines? What are the good platforms? What are the good, how should we tell this story in a more traditional way? We should be better at asking, how can the audience be part of the story?
Are there any fears that you have around that? As in, like, I'm really appreciating right now the honesty in, I wish we were doing more of this. What do you think has stopped you so far? Is it just because there's so many other things? Are there fears in there? I don't know.
But I think the fear is, I was saying this, the contract towards the community, the two kind of where we came from and where I think we're moving more along. I think the fear is that you can also go so in deep with the community, and really that there are some stories that you don't, that aren't made, that should be made, because it maybe you can't just say that relevance is, sometimes there is some really important stories out there that we should be doing. If people are cheating with funds, or they're, whatever they're doing, lying or whatever, there are stories that we need to be, that has to be told, and we need to be better at telling them so they are relevant. But if you start only looking at community, there will be stories there that we miss. So I think for me, it's a joint venture between these two sides of journalism. I call them contract and community. There's probably a lot of other ways of seeing them. So I think the fear is if you forget the contract side, so you don't do these stories, you just do the constructive, feeling good, which are really important, but it can't only be that. You need to do both sides of the perspective. So I think that's a fear. And then yet, I hate saying it, bad excuses, but there is a lot of things, and we aren't mature enough. It is difficult. And I also, from my chair as editor-in-chief, I think if we do it, we need to be aware of why we're doing it and really understanding it, instead of just doing it a bit. If we just do things a bit, it won't manifest itself. So we need to do it probably, not wait until it's perfect, because then you never. So you need to start experimenting, but we need to be a bit more mature in understanding what is it we want to achieve with this side of journalism. And then we're just, again, we have habits, we have ways of working that we've been doing for many years, and it's difficult to change that. And that's not only, sounds like I'm very harsh towards the journalists This is also editorial. Also, is also leadership. It's also the rest of the organization. So it's not just the journalists aren't. It's the entire organization that aren't really accustomed to this. And you said marketing was being a word that also isn't the same. We're not using as much, but I think of these functions, marketing, it's been too. It's not close enough to the product what we do. So even just saying, yeah, we need to do more marketing of what we do, but what are we marketing? It's not just a product; it's something else. And so I think it's not just saying marketing is back for good. We need to develop marketing as well. So we need to just saying that it's not only the journalist's fault. It is an industry. It is legacy. It is habits from all of us. So we all need to really take this to take this in. And for me, again, there's a lot of these things that we need to take into account. And I think we need to take one at a time and make sure that we kind of know what we're doing and then start experimenting and then start something else. If we try to do everything a bit, it won't manifest.
The habits bit makes so much sense. I've been trying to join the gym for at least 10 years. So if I can't do that and I am one person and I actually want to do it, obviously.
Imagine if you try for 250 years. That's something that.
Exactly. Maybe let's have a little talk about technology. I see it as an enhancer of strategy, but what role do you see like tech, like AI, or all this? Let's go back to the data analytics. What role does it play with your audience engagement efforts?
Well, technology is. I mean, you said it yourself that we have high demands for journalists. We want them to be everything. I think one of the ways actually to do this okay and actually say this is possible is that you use technology to enhance whatever you do. So you use technology to help you be best at what you actually should be best at. So you use AI or tech or automation or all kinds of technology to actually get a lot of the work that's repetitive, more easy, not really value creation, but you need to do it. Get all of that off the books and make sure that you actually focus on the key value proposition that you do as a journalist, which is telling the right story. So versions of stories, because it's been a huge discussion for years and years in the industry. And from a leadership, you always say, will you make a short version of it? Will you make a longer version, a bullet point, audio version? And you say, it's only, you have the content. It only takes 5 minutes. It never takes 5 minutes. It takes a lot more than 5 minutes. Actually, with AI now, you can say, well, tell the story in the way you actually found most fitting, and AI will help you to make versions of it. So we had a discussion, the articles, you have audio articles where the articles are read out loud. So we also look into that, but we actually stopped doing it in the normal way where we just read the articles, and we have AI turn the articles into kind of a more podcast kind of version, still with one person, but more as if you read something written, it doesn't give the same flow, but actually making it to a podcast, making it as a manuscript in some ways is good. And going forward, maybe you start with the podcast. You say, this is for audio only. This is started as a podcast, and you can have AI help you to make an article out of it, to make social media content, to make newsletters, to make whatever you want to. And suddenly, I'm asking you to do, Francesca, please you need to make a newsletter and a podcast, an article, a short form, all of these things. And if I told you now or 10 years ago, it'd take you a week to do. But now with AI and the right training, you would actually still have to proofread and have the editor in the loop to make sure that what comes out is actually good enough. But it saves you a lot of time. And in the same way, technology can help us being journalists and being good at what we do. And then in regarding to audience engagement, technology can help you, talking a lot about relevance, and really help you being more and more relevant, making sure that we get the content out in the right form at the right time for the right people. If you talk, personalization, automation, all kind of things. There's a lot of nice words that sounds difficult now and have been for a long time, but it gets easier and easier. And it is something that would help us being more relevant at all time, because it is difficult being relevant for everyone. One size fits all. That's not how it works. And you said at some point, one thing is that it'd be good for your business, but actually the audience expects it. So we are beyond that point that it'd be good for us, would be better, whereas it will hurt us if we're not able to being relevant the right way, because people are used to being seen in the product. These are your articles. This is something that's special for you. Of course, we need to be able to nail that and get the right articles, but people more and more expect it. So tech will really help us there. Both making some things really easy and then making other things really complex. But the complex things will make us be more relevant. I'm sure of that.
I love that podcast example. Is this something that you have done, that you've or you're working on, or?
We did it. We're testing right now. We have an article that we make into a podcast, into a person talking about a story instead of just telling the story again. We haven't done it. It was my example for them was that what you might as well start it as a podcast and then work the other way around instead of just starting in text. We do start in text. That's our habit. That's what we've been doing always. So that's what we do. So I was trying to but we need the text because we have newspapers, we have platforms, we need to put something in. So I can't just say everybody go make podcasts. No. That would be very difficult for us right now. We still do have a newspaper. We still do have other platforms where podcasts for itself won't work yet. So this was just an example of how you can think podcast first, think audio first, and then create articles from it. So we've been doing it from an article to a podcast, or podcast the feel, and testing that. And we have it's experiments, so it's small tests. But right now the click through is really nice, and I would say it's more important the listen to through rate is really good. So people actually listening to it. And it's a bit difficult because all the other sites where I get articles read for me, I have the articles. I kind of follow the article with the audio, but I couldn't do this because it's not the same text. So for me, it was kind of the final test is this a format that you can go for a run with, do the dishes with, whatever you do when you hear a podcast. And it worked. And we had some editors using their 30 minutes in a box, and their voices are now cloned, so it's our own regional accent dialect, and it's a couple of our editors' voices we're using. So it's a lot of fun.
I love that. And have you heard back from your audience? Have you had any feedback from them directly?
Only on the data. We have a qualitative interview in a couple of weeks, so we only have the data side, which is, I would say, especially the listen through rate is interesting, because putting a box there with a big play button if people are not accustomed to it being there, it's a bit, what is this? But people actually listening to the audio file, that's really interesting. And it's the next generation of newsreaders. They expect to do it, to have news on audio, have relevance. So it's not a fun fact that we use data to say we want more. We want people to click more. We want them to read more. We want them to visit us more often. We want them blah, blah, blah. We want more. But actually, if you ask them, the audience that we want to engage with, what's the most important thing for you? It's saving time. It's time they're missing. And only thing we're actually measuring is how much time do they use. So that's something there we need to look into. We're not using the data in the right way and giving the value that we need. So it's okay. You don't you don't have to come to Nordjyske every hour. If you can come once a day and feel that you get the product you need to be, to be able to work in this part of Denmark, then that's cool. And you will pay for that because it gives you value. So we also need to make sure that we look into the right data.
I like that. I do think that a lot of people, we are measuring time spent on page as our biggest thing, and yet sometimes you get the value without having to spend the entire time on the page.
And we're still doing it. I'm still doing it. So we can also see in data that the more you use the product, the better your CLV will be, the better you're more likely to convert, you're more likely to stay. So of course there's something there, but it's just funny. If you ask people and you get the qualitative answers, they want to save time. What they are missing is time, because they have, it's people working with kids. It's just busy lives. People are really busy, and there's a lot of studies of these things now that are interesting. That actually people have. It was an American study last year again. Like they have like 32 hours on a day because they have a lot of split screening, and they can listen while doing something else. So that's why you need to tap in. And if we only do text, it's going to be difficult because you need to put everything else aside and only focus on the text. Can we be audio? Can we be video? Can we be relevant in another way? There will be an upside there and actually gaining people's time instead of just, as we see now, people going to Facebook or going to other places to spend their time. Netflix.
What about any pitfalls or challenges what that have come up in that audience engagement? Have you done anything or tried anything that hasn't gone the way you'd expect, that was a bit of a fail potentially? In our world, I don't feel like we talk enough about our failures. I think we're so good at saying, oh, we did this really well. We can say the failures of the industry, but not necessarily anything that we've done wrong. Have you got
Well,
any challenges
we've
to
done
share from that?
we've done loads. We've done loads wrong, but I do believe, in general, I do believe in experimenting. So I really want to create a culture at Nordjyske where it's okay to fail, because I think that's what we need. So we do experiments. We have, I had it's not a failure yet, but it didn't have the reaction. We did what you call it in English. We had an expert on relationships and sex starting to write for us, and people could write in with questions. And this part of the more rural part of Denmark we're in now, people really don't like to talk about feelings. But I thought it was maybe, you do it anonymously. And we had this expert she was a therapist, so she's talking to these people about feelings, which I just thought was a really fun dilemma, and tried to kind of create a platform on Instagram and on our site where we could get a conversation around feelings, relationships, sex up and running. And it hasn't really panned out because people don't like to talk about feelings and sex and relationships. So that's for sure. I wouldn't say a failure yet. We're still trying, but that was a bit more difficult than I hoped. And I came in with a lot of data insights from my old job, and I just thought that I could more plug and play. But it is just local journalism is different from national journalism. It's another community, other people, the other feelings I was talking about to the news. So there's a lot of stories, a lot of ways of doing things which hasn't worked out the way. So topics, ways of writing stories, telling stories that just failed and haven't had the readership that I would expect. And it's just because I didn't understand my readers good enough and thought I could mechanically take in the learnings from my old job and just say we can just do this and it will work. And some of it did, but a lot of it didn't. So there's a lot of failures, a lot of mistakes, a lot of things. But again, it's not mistakes. It didn't work. Do something else. So for me, it's not. The important thing is that we don't wait and use half a year to invest, and then see like a big epiphany and see what happened now. And then if that fails, then you're really you have a big issue. I want to experiment all the time and really want to create that culture where people know it's okay to fail as long as they learn. And I hope we can be better at. I agree so much with you. I hope we can be better at sharing the failures or the mistakes or the things we wish we did that we've been doing different. And we both love conferences. I think it's one of our biggest issues with these conferences is that people go up and use half an hour to explain why they're so brilliant.
Yeah.
And we would all learn a lot more if people went on stage and used half an hour to tell what they did wrong. That's where a lot of learning would be. But I also understand the mechanics. I've been doing the conference as well, been on the stage, and I did the same thing. So
I want to celebrate your
double
failure,
standards.
though. Well, I say
Double
failure,
standards.
it's not failed yet.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I want to celebrate it because, to be fair, that's the kind of thing that I probably would think would work as well. But obviously, hyperlocal. I love this difference, this experience that you have from working with a national brand to going into a much smaller place and working with a hyperlocal, and the differences that you're finding, because we do go to these conferences and we do hear about all of these success stories that other people are doing, and here we are, learning it completely differently. I guess that's the bit. It's the audience engagement that also teaches us if this is going to be relevant to our audience, because every audience, every community is slightly different. Everyone's expecting something slightly differently. And so I'm celebrating your failure.
It was the word I was. It was kind of a letterbox where people could write in with issue. That was the idea, and I hope there would be a lot of fun examples and
You
relevant
really just
examples.
wanted to read the really good stories coming in.
Yeah, I wanted some filth. No. But again, and for local, one of the things that I'm also still believe is the right thing we're doing, but it is different, is that people expect local journalism. I call it kind of a postcode journalism, where you do stories just because it happened somewhere. It's not necessarily a good story, a relevant story, or even an interesting story, but you do it because it happened down the road. So you can do this, and I think that kind of journalism is going to be very difficult in the long way to create enough. It can be too hyper local. Still need to be relevant stories that people actually find interesting, and I think we need to develop there. But and the letterbox example was just, if you only go after postcodes, it's difficult to talk about relationship, because that's something
They know each
completely
other.
different. So, but looking we have like 30 to 55-year-olds. We want to have more engaged in our journalism. I mean, their parents, they work, they are in a relationship or not, or divorced or whatever. These things are huge for them, for us, and not being able to tap into those kind of stories just because we're local, I think that's wrong. But we need to make sure it's done in a way that connects with our community. So done in a way that's that's more sees eye to eye with them, and not just generically, which could be done anywhere in the country or in the world, especially. So that's what I'm trying to to get to work. And then we're still doing local politics, local sports, a lot of other things. So it's only just a small fraction of what we do, but we've never been doing it. It's difficult to do because it's not natural for a local news brand to do that. But I think it's part of being relevant.
Last questions, really. What impact has any of your audience engagement efforts had so far on the organization's bottom line, or is that still something that you're playing with?
Yeah, we're still playing with what we see on the bottom line is more the disconnect to the audience, to be honest. And that's where I can say whatever we do with journalism, and we can keep on doing a lot of journalistic choices every day, but the disconnect is really important, that we find a connection. So I would say more in a negative way, but it's more that way around, that it really came to my really became important for me to look into, is that there's a disconnect right now between the audience and, I would say, news brands in general, but also with us as a local brand. And that connection, we need to find out what is, in a digital world, in a world of the in 21st century, what is the connection? It's not just that we have a newspaper that we can bring you information. It's something more and more profound than that, and really figuring out what is that connection. I think I agree with you there. That connection cannot be copy pasted. That is a connection you need to find out with your audience where you are. There's probably a lot of strategies around it that we can help each other with, but in the answer, the connection to the audience is going to be profoundly from region to region. What is it that makes us stand out? And that's the other side of the story. So what works? That's one thing. That's the relevance. And then what stands out is what gives us the differentiation, that we actually are important, that we're not just another news brand, that we are something special. And that connection should be possible for a local brand, because it's kind of in the DNA that we are local and something for our local region. But we need to be better at doing it, showing it, marketing it. Walk the walk instead of just talking the talk, as we're doing now.
Well, it's exciting to do the walking the walking. It is, and you can only go up. That I'm a eternal optimist. I actually think that the situation that we're in at the moment, yes, is dire in a lot of senses, But it's an exciting moment to revamp. It's like a young
It
person
is.
going to university for the first time. Hey, we have to start again in a way. Maybe we've got a bit of branding behind from our old friends, but it's this new. We're going into a new version of our industry, aren't we? And it's exciting.
And we need to keep some things. I mean, the business model has died.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that the same story is for journalism. So I mean, you need to not. The dire is that we don't have money right now. So a lot of people, we're missing money. Our revenue is declining. It's difficult, but that's the business model. There's something wrong with. So that's for sure something that's wrong with the journalism. There's something wrong, but it's not the same thing. It's something else. So we need to do something else with the journalism to figure out what is the future business model. But just saying because the business model is dead, that there's no hope for journalism. Maybe I'm a bit of an optimist as well there, but I don't believe that you can say that. It doesn't mean that it's not difficult, and business model dying can be really serious for companies, of course, if you're not able to develop. But saying that journalism has died because the business model has, that's wrong. Journalism is more and more important, and maybe more important than ever, because the amount, you said technology, the amount of information that's out there, fake news. So the need for trustworthy independent media outlets has never been more important. We just need to make sure that we are trustworthy and keeping that, and then market ourselves and show that we're important.
I love that. And I think I'll finish on that one there. Two eternal optimists talking about how important journalism is.
Exactly.
It sounds perfect.
Isn't that preaching for a choir? Wasn't that what you said?
Thank you so much for your time, Kevin.